Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What's going down, Patrick?
Hello, hello. I'm great, mate. How are you? I'm very good.
I'm doing very well. This is GarageBand Weekly. Sorry, it's always an awkward start. I never quite know because
Need
Patrick
to
was in the
dance again.
thumbnail, and I'm like, I could do a big announcement and say, guess what? We've got a special guest, and it is drum roll, and you've already seen it in the thumbnail. But it is a pleasure, as always, to have the GarageBand guide guru himself, Patrick. And for the four people watching this video that don't know who you are and what you do, why don't you give us the 30-second elevator? It's like a job interview, Patrick. The 30-second elevator pitch about who is Patrick and what do you do?
No pressure. Yeah, Patrick. Yeah, run the website and YouTube channel, the GarageBand Guide, where we teach you how to master GarageBand and hopefully improve your music as well.
Excellent.
That's all I've got,
And
man. Can't make
that's all
answer
you
in
got.
30 seconds.
No, that's beautiful. That's you're a pro because you actually get the big tick because you're supposed to do it in 15. I just said 30, so there you go. You get the job. And you also learned how to use nice RGB lights and actually have a more decorative background than the plain boringness that is me. I was looking at my background and I've got background envy with Patrick there because he's got.
Bring the treadmill back, Pete. Bring the treadmill back. We all
I
miss it.
so do. I need to tilt the camera back so that the treadmill's in the corner. But inside jokes, but yeah, folks don't know. I used to have my treadmill in my background until I realized if I rotated 10 degrees to the left, you would get that corner instead of my ugly treadmill. So go figure. Hello to the folks that we have here live. There's a bunch of folks here, too many to probably mention all of them, but EmoBot 9000 and Dr. Zorders were here early. Scott, Cody, Mark, Benedict Stewart is here. We've got Guzzo, we've got Auntie G in the house, a whole lot of folks that I'm going to miss. But if you do have questions, we're going to have time for some Q&A throughout the show. So please throw all of your hard questions, put question for Patrick at the start, and anything easy. Every time you've been, I did joke that when I started using GarageBand on Mac, there'd be a help button and it would just call Patrick every time I had a problem, and it's not been quite that bad. But I must admit, I have
sleep for weeks.
I have dived into the GarageBand Guide archives more than one occasion, trying to learn things, and now that Patrick has a new Mac M1, he can now support me with my hardware issues as well as software. So. Let's jump in.
Pete, anytime.
Let's jump in and talk about that because you have a new Mac, and it is news. It's news for you, and it's news for the GarageBand Guide community. Now, you've just released a video. I haven't even watched it yet because I wanted to get the absolute first view and reaction and not have a clue what you think of it so far. But let the folks know, Mac M1, why'd you buy it? And what do you think of it?
Massive mistake. I'm going to send it back. Absolutely not. No. Yeah, it's great. Well, obviously, you have the same Mac Mini. I think I've got slightly different specs from you. This is like a replacement for my main kind of music production and video production rig. So I had to go for like the 16 gig RAM and higher storage and stuff. But yeah, it's pretty good, I would say. Probably different experiences, the two of us, because I'm obviously coming from the Apple ecosystem already, just to like a newer version of it. And then you're obviously coming from PC to Mac. We're going to have different thoughts on what is good and what's bad. You were remarking in the pre-show there that you learned how to full screen. It's like different use cases, I think. But yeah, no, it's great. I mean, you'll know yourself. It's a fantastic machine. Obviously, isn't completely without issue, but in terms of like raw speed and music production, editing, all that good stuff, it's great. Yeah, great.
Excellent. Well, it's good to hear, and it's good to know that it's working well for you, so that when I do call you for those tech support calls, you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't checked it out, there is Worth the Hype ? And of course, you've got the obligatory. Ooh,
should have done a red circle around one of the bits in the thumbnail as well. Yeah.
It's the classic YouTuber pose. We have to do it, folks. It's actually when we sign up to YouTube, it's actually in the agreement. It says every thumbnail must have a picture of you looking confused or excited or like you're about to have some sort of fit. It's actually written in there. So please do jump over and check out Pat. I will be doing it after this show, but I didn't want to spoil the fun and I didn't want to jump in too early. Whoops, I've got rid of Patrick. There you go. That'll learn you.
Back.
So cool. So you mentioned, yeah, it's okay. What's been the biggest change? So I know a lot of folks have asked things like why would I upgrade or why should I upgrade? And we'll talk about that in a minute as well. But what's been the biggest difference or the biggest positive you think out of the whole process of using the M1?
I think in terms of workflow, everything just is a bit faster. It's snappier. I kind of put off for a while because the screen capture and editing software I use, ScreenFlow, wasn't supported on M1, not even as like a Intel program that would run on Rosetta 2. So literally 2 days after they said, right, yes, we've got an Apple native version, I was like, oh, okay, I don't really have a reason not to get this anymore. And from that perspective, I know all these tech YouTubers are talking about how snappy it is with 4K timelines and all this kind of stuff. I've got a 1080p camera. It's even faster than that. Yeah, absolutely. So even these programs that aren't Apple specific, so a lot of people talk about like Final Cut Pro, for example, and the performance in that, even in these third-party programs that are now being transferred across to native Apple Silicon versions, are very fast as well, noticeably more quick than they were on my old Intel machine.
Very cool. And I mean, as you mentioned, for me, I'm coming from a 12-year-old PC that was literally would cough and wheeze when I turned it on. It was that old. But for me, the snappiness and we were talking about it beforehand, and I said, don't tell anyone, but I'm just using the Mac as my daily driver machine now because every time I go back to the PC, I'm just so frustrated by how slow it is. It's reliable because I know how to use it, and it's a little bit more familiar, but yeah, apart from the few challenges I've had getting used to Mac in general, having the Mac M1 and the speed of it, and again, I went for the absolute base level. I'm like, if I'm going to be a guinea pig, I'm going to guinea pig it so mine's the $699 US Mac. It cost me $10.99 Australian here, and I only got 8 gigabytes of RAM, which I was terrified about because my PC from 10 years ago has 16 gigabytes, and I'm downgrading to less RAM and only a 256 gigabyte hard drive. But I still haven't filled the 256 gig hard drive, even with all the stuff I do with audio and video. And at no point have I been sitting there with any sort of beach balls. I've heard about these horrible beach balls. I think I've seen it twice, and I think that was when I was trying to install drivers for hardware that's not supported yet. And that's probably been my biggest challenge is the hardware support with the Mac M1, given that it's brand new. Have you had any trouble or any warnings that you want to give folks about any sort of hardware or any incompatibility issues you've come across?
I really expected some, especially with my Moto M2. They're not supported at all. It says on the website that they are not yet supported on M1 machines. Excuse me, and it just works fine. I think anything class compliant, you'll be fine with. USB microphones, I'm using a USB microphone just now. Absolutely fine. Blue Snowball works fine. My Focusrite Scarlett 2i4 works completely fine. So, I mean, obviously, I know you had issues with mixers specifically. Did you have anything else apart from your mixer that was causing issues, or was it just
it was really just that. My webcam as well, very early on, so my Logitech webcam, but I think that was more a user error that I didn't know how to install apps that weren't in the App Store. So because I had to download and install a package, and it did something, and then it was running, and I didn't think it was running, but it actually was running up in the little top section. Like I didn't really understand. So it was more that I didn't understand how the programs were working. So it was probably actually working, and Jade Star then went and tested exactly the same camera with exactly the same machine, and it worked fine. So clearly user error, but then someone put me onto an app called Webcam Settings. So now I look buttery smooth because I can just throw that app on there. Yeah, it just makes life a lot easier. But yeah, I think all in all, I'm pretty impressed. If someone said to me right now, and we'll get into sort of the next topic, the main topic of the show today, which is iPad or Mac, which way we should go now. But yeah, I didn't ever think I would get a Mac, and Apple have actually, they're genius. They're evil geniuses, I think, because they've done exactly what they needed to do, which is pitch a Mac that is high performance, but around $1,000, because there was no point me spending $3,000, $4,000 on a Mac Pro for what I do and for it being my first Mac. But this is like the entry level Mac that I think every PC user will be very tempted by, and I certainly was, and I haven't been disappointed so far. So
I say the
Yeah.
same thing in my video. You'll see when you watch it immediately after this video, Pete.
Three times in a row. I watched it.
Thank you. Yeah, don't skip on the ads. Yeah, that it is. I forgot what I was going to say now. See, too busy having fun. I forgot what I was going to say. No, there will not be. So this is like the base model. You're exactly right. There will not be like a less powerful version of these machines, and these are bloody brilliant. You can only kind of imagine what the next ones that are potentially coming soon are going to be like in terms of performance. Yeah.
Absolutely, and folks here are saying pretty much exactly that. So
Yeah.
Dean Thomas says, I'm on the fence about the new M1 Max. I think I'm going to wait till second gen. And hey, yeah, if you are, like, if for what we're doing, it's probably cool. If you were indeed cutting together 4K or 8K footage and having a
Yeah.
bunch of B-roll and doing all that sort of thing, and you currently ran a 16-inch MacBook Pro with 16 gig of RAM, and I think you answered a question that someone had, that they said, "Oh, was it a mistake that I bought a Mac in November and I bought this beefed up Mac?" And you said, "Well, no, it's still a great machine, and
Yeah.
it's going to be a great machine. It's going to run Big Sur. It's going to do all the things for a long time to come."
I think that's an important distinction to make. Like, I don't think these machines are upgrades for somebody who has a 2019 i9 MacBook Pro. That isn't what this is. This is just a really good step up. If you've got an older machine, I would say you've a lot of people out there still running kind of 2012, 2014 models. This is you're going to see a huge increase in performance with these machines. If you're coming from for example, a 2019 i9 MacBook Pro, you're not going to see that same jump in performance, and it's probably not going to be worth it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And consequently, a lot of people that are jumping ship may be selling off there. So you're making a really good deal on a 2019 Mac
Very
if
true.
you don't care about the newest and the shinies, which is usually me. I'm so not bleeding edge when it comes to most things. But this time around, I'm like, I'm just going to jump on this because it made sense. It wasn't to be the first. I wasn't even in that first wave. I waited a couple of weeks and then went, all right, time to give it a try. So Tom Rochelle, hopefully we'll be getting one soon. And Mark has the same point you made, which is keep the weakest Apple will ever issue, and it's already a beast. So it's going well. Guzzo says, love mine. SM Borthwick, I really like the idea of M1 Max. However, with many devs opting out of iOS compatibility, I'm no longer sure. And look, that's one thing that I probably have been disappointed by, the fact that I can't run GarageBand iOS. I know that's a very, very small use case, and less than 1% of people are going to care about that. But just the concept of being able to have GarageBand and iMovie iOS and all my iOS apps on my Mac seemed really cool, even if they wouldn't work that well and be a bit clunky.
Yeah.
But Apple, as well as a bunch of other developers, have decided to opt out.
Yeah.
Did you play around with the iOS apps or have any experience with that when you did your first?
Haven't had much of a chance. Yeah, no, I did mention it in my video, as you'll see. But I haven't had a huge amount of opportunity to really dive in. There's a couple of programs that I have managed to get running, just kind of that I've spent 20 minutes with, like LumaFusion, for example, actually works pretty well. I think Apple made a bit of a mistake kind of hyping up that feature, because it really isn't what they said that it was going to be, or what they made it out to be. It isn't this new utopia of everything you've ever bought from the App Store, whether it's Mac or iOS, is now going to work on your Mac, because that isn't the case at all, though. So
yeah, it's really not, and I got excited. I was up at 4 a.m. watching the keynote, and as soon as they said that, I thought, yeah, this is the utopia we've wanted. The same chip on an iPad and and a Mac, and then just being able to cross-platform run things. And I think someone said, I can't find it now. So I wish it would run the full Logic Pro. So I wish iPad could run Logic Pro, and that's been rumored for a really long time. This was kind of a different thing that was more getting your iOS apps on the Mac, and then it was kind of nerfed down to, well, some apps kind of with some level of implementation. But it's definitely there. The potential's there with things like LumaFusion. That is definitely, but I guess it's more the apps that were desktop-like anyway. So video editing's kind of been taken from desktop to mobile and to iPad, and therefore using a cursor and a mouse and a pointer kind of makes sense. The touchscreen is not exactly a vital part of it, but an app like GarageBand iOS, when I logically sat down rationally without all the emotion of going, but I just want it, I thought about how you would actually use that. And when I do demos on my iPad, using the mouse to kind of play the touch instruments and to move things around is actually a pain in the ass. It's not intuitive. The touchscreen is where it's at. So Yeah, it's an interesting one, and we will jump into that. So continue if you're here live, or if you're watching on the replay, drop a comment and let us know what you think about the new Macs and if you're considering one. And our answer to our next question, which will be, which way do you think you'll go in over the next couple of years? Will you be producing on a Mac or will you be producing in iOS? Now, I'm going to ask Patrick this question because I know that you look. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say that you probably led heavier on the Mac side for your personal music production in the
Yeah.
past. You obviously use iOS as well, and have an iPhone and have an iPad, and have tutorials on iOS and record in iOS. But you've probably been 70-30 Mac iOS. Do you see that continuing? Now that you've got the Mac M1 in particular, what role does the iPad play in your music production going forward? And would you recommend someone starting out going an iPad or a Mac?
We've had this discussion before, I'm sure, about a year ago on your show, and I'm
Yep.
sure I said at the time, "Oh yeah, usually I would have said it would be a Mac, but now I'm not so sure." That's kind of the same, I guess, but
Mm,
the playing fields have definitely been leveled. So so for the last kind of year and a half, certainly, people using GarageBand on Mac were kind of really left out in the cold. There were
mm,
no updates, there were no kind of features added, not even any sound packs. GarageBand on iOS was getting really cool content added to its sound library, and none of it was coming to the Mac. So there was that kind of feeling of, is GarageBand on Mac now abandonware? Is all their
mm,
focus going to now be on the iPad and the iOS or the iPhone version of GarageBand? Sorry. And obviously in the last kind of 4 months or so, that has now changed. They've obviously released a large update to GarageBand on Mac. And then with these new M1 machines, it really feels like that kind of playing field has been leveled somewhat. I think in classic Pete Johns live show fashion, it depends. Um,
Sit on that fence.
I think if you are on a budget, if you're just getting into music making in the Apple ecosystem, as it were, I'd still
Mm,
probably say go and get yourself a base iPad. Not sure what it costs in Australia, 320 quid for the base model in the UK.
mm,
You're not going to find a cheaper way to get into music making and production with a machine that will be as good as a base level iPad, because they're great.
mm,
I think if you then kind of move up the levels, so if you were looking at, for example, the iPad Air, which is kind of the mid-range iPad, is,
mm,
I've got it here, so it's like £600 for the 64-bit version, 64 gigabit storage version, sorry, I should say. You're probably not going to want that. The next step up from that is the 256 gigabyte storage version, which comes in at £730 in the UK. Now, the Mac Mini that you got
mm,
is £700 in the UK. So,
mm.
depending on what equipment you already have, I'm not sure that I would recommend someone get an iPad Air for music production over an entry level um, iMac.
And
iMac,
that's
Mac Mini.
Mac Mini, yeah.
Um,
And that's it's interesting. I'm glad you did the sums. That's why I bring Patrick on the
I've
show so that he can do the
written
hard
them
work
down and
for
still
us.
got them wrong. So, yeah, don't thank me for it.
But yeah, and exactly. I'm looking at this for here in Australia. So I paid 1,099 for the entry level Mac M1, and yeah, like you say, it's a good comparison to make because
Mm,
the iPad Air is probably the direct comparison if you were going to compare the
yeah.
performance and the storage and the capacity. So you've only got 4 gigabytes of RAM on the iPad Air, and you've got still got the 256 gigabytes of storage.
Mhm.
Then yeah, you're gonna set yourself back $1,100, and if you go to the Mac universe, it's going to be the same. So if you go to the Mac Mini and you spec out one of these, honestly, it's going to take me a while now to click through all of Apple's promotion to actually get there. But yeah, you can see that the base level Mac Mini here in Australia is 1,099, and just subtract about 40% for UK and US because yeah, I live in a strange country with a dollar that's not valuable. But it does make it's an interesting thing, and I guess. Oh, I've lost Patrick again. I must press the right button. There you go.
Oh, no.
I guess it does depend on portability, and it's an interesting one because right now a lot of folks are not very portable. So there's
Yeah.
not many people that are going to be
Yeah.
taking your iPad to the cafe or taking it out to the beach or to the park or to a lot of places. So it's probably a little bit less important that you're portable. So a lot of people may lean towards a Mac Mini, but I guess the MacBook Air is another option that's probably somewhere in between as well. So the MacBook Air also got the new M1 chip, and if you
Mhm.
don't already have a mouse and keyboard and you just want an all-in-one setup, that's pretty compelling too. So
Yeah.
compared to what it was, and I think I said to you beforehand with weighing this up, it used to be for a decent new Mac, you were starting around here in Australia around 2,000, probably closer to 3,000 for something that would run everything you needed to.
Yeah.
And comparing that to the $1,000 for a decent iPad, it was a very different comparison. I
Yes.
think that gap narrowing now down to where
Absolutely.
about
Yeah.
$1,000 you're going to get yourself in on either side. It makes it, if anything, more confusing. So the poor folks who are trying to work out what to buy and what to do, it's going to be a little bit
That's
tough.
a very good point. If you go up the next level, so your iPad Pro, so the
Mm,
larger version of the iPad Pro is about £1,000 in the UK, maybe slightly under. Entry level MacBook Air, £1,000.
yeah, yeah.
And the kind of experiences that you'll have on both are going to be great. I think if you're choosing between those two, I would maybe possibly err more on the side of the MacBook Air now. I would say,
Mm,
just because the entry level MacBook Air, you probably couldn't run GarageBand on it. The old version, it was like an Intel
yeah,
i3 or something. It was dreadful. Good for
yeah.
sending like emails and surfing the web, and that's about it, really.
So flat
Whereas
web.
these, even you've got the 8 GB and 256 storage Mac Mini, which in terms of
Mm,
performance is going to be very similar to the MacBook Air now, and you can see yourself that that kind of experience is great now. It's
mm.
nowhere near what it used to be in terms of
Sluggishness,
sluggishness
Miss
with the
Moneypenny.
i3 version.
Yeah, exactly right. And again, if you did want to go for something like that, the MacBook Air, and again, these are Australian dollars. Sorry, I should have gone to the US site. But yeah, you're getting in for about $1,100 US or 1,600 here Australian, and it's not exactly the same as the Mac
Mm,
Mini because it has no fan. Not that I've heard the Mac Mini fan at all. It hasn't actually come
no.
on. I don't think in the entire time I've been using it. It is whisper quiet, and it has a 7-core GPU instead of an 8-core, which really would make minimal difference. So it's basically the exact same machine, but you're going to pay a little extra because you get the portable form factor and you get the screen and the keyboard and the trackpad and everything in there.
Yeah, yeah.
So it does make it. Well, I keep doing that. I keep getting rid of Patrick. It does make it a little more challenging. Let's jump in to see what some folks have to say. So Victor Isbell says, "I love everything iOS except two things. One, we don't have Logic Pro, and two, we don't have Melodyne. Auto-tune in iPad is far from auto-tune in Mac. Yeah. If you rely on some of those plugins and some of those audio units, AUV3 doesn't have the same level of flexibility. That's a valid point. So if there's
Hmm.
particular apps you love on the Mac, some of them aren't on iOS. And I don't think there's any cases the other way around. There's not too many things that are on iOS that aren't on Mac. So I guess if you want the absolute flexibility, Mac's probably the better way to go.
I think, in terms of synths and instruments, I think for me anyway, they're vastly superior on iOS than they are on Mac. I know you do get some really good ones on Mac, but they cost a bloody fortune. Whereas on iOS, you
Good.
can go and get Agonizer, Jakob Hack, and Numerical Audio's
Mm-hmm.
amazing acid bass synth, I'll try and say that correctly, for like, what, 15 quid or something like that? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think from that point of view, instrument-wise and synth-wise, you're probably going to get more good options on iOS.
Yeah, and it's a good point to make, and probably something we should have said. And Gary's raised it here. I'm making music on my phone because I'm cheap and stubborn,
Yeah,
and it is definitely a lot cheaper. So there's a lot more. Basically, any plugin or any app that you use, you're paying about 20% of the cost. It's very weird. You go to Clevgrand, and the apps
yeah,
that are $10 on the App Store for something like Bruce Free, you're paying $50 if you
yeah,
want the audio unit version for Mac. So I know that is something to keep in mind. That even though the
yeah.
entry cost may be the same, if you want to start using a lot of those more advanced plugins and apps and tools, you're going to be paying a lot more if you're on the Mac.
Good point.
Sion says, for me, the iPad and iPhone is great whenever I'm on the go or performing live. I'll likely use the Mac to make scripts, test iOS apps, and finish projects I can't do on my iPad. Yeah, and something like this, the iPad's great, but I can't run two monitors and a webcam and two audio sources and have Patrick here via the magical, powerful beans of the internet on my iPad. It
Yeah.
could be done, but I'd be using multiple, I'd be using wireless, I'd be hacking it together. So I think having a desktop, if you are doing live streaming, podcasting, that sort of thing, is definitely an advantage or something that I've found it. Dean Thomas says, yes, our buddy Doug over at the Sound Test Room does everything on the base iPad. He does. And
Yeah.
Doug is an absolute testament to the fact that you don't need the gear to get the job done. He's not
Yeah.
rocking the latest iPad Pro. He's not rocking all the latest gear and all the latest apps. He's just getting music made
Yeah.
and showing you how to make music the best you can. Doctor's orders. At the moment, iPad for me need portability and so much easier for arthritic hands and fingers. Yeah,
That's a good point. Yeah.
accessibility is the thing.
Yeah.
Over the keyboard and mouse can be very, the
Yeah.
claw hands after a while from using it. The touchscreen interface can be a lot better
Yes.
for a lot of folks. So I know for basically the younger folks, they don't actually understand not touchscreen. My children come in and they just reach up and try and drag things around my screen, and I do the same thing. But for them, they're like, "Why can't I touch it?" And I'm like, "You need to go back in time and ask Steve Jobs, because he said, Uncle Steve said, we will never get a touchscreen Mac, and we never will." Lady Rodeline says, "I have iPad and Mac, and I'm on the iMac more," which
Yeah.
is yeah. And I think that's what I've found. Since I've had a Mac, my iPad usage has started dropping, not going away. I know people freaked out when I got a Mac. They're just like, "This is the end of studio
Come
life
back.
today." But I'm still more at home on iOS. So
Yes.
if I'm sitting down and recording a demo right now, and I need to do it as quickly and smoothly as possible, I jump straight on my iPad. I'm not touching the Mac because I still hunt. I feel like when you're learning to touch type, I'm hunting and pecking around my Mac, trying to work out how to use it.
You're a great use case for that as well, Pete, because I distinctly remember back when you had a proper job, you would, when you would commute back and forth, you'd often have kind of videos of you sitting, editing your videos on LumaFusion on your phone, on your bus on the way to work. And I
Yeah.
guess, obviously, you made a good point earlier that we are not particularly portable as a society at the minute, really. So, yeah, I think you definitely will be using your Mac more. Do you are you out and about at the minute? Do you take your phone with you? Do you still do that kind of editing stuff when you're out and about on
I do.
GarageBand or in LumaFusion? Or
Yeah. So I still actually every video you see apart from live stuff is edited on on my old.
crazy,
It's getting old now. My iPhone
it's so
10s.
cool.
But yeah, and I'll do it walking around, and I'll do it, like I say, on the bus or when I'm at the cricket. The cricket is great because at the moment there's a lot of cricket going on, and when I go to the cricket, and I know every time I was saying to Patrick before the show, I have to, I feel bad. I feel like because things are okay here in our country at the moment, I'm talking about things that I'm doing, and everyone else is going to come at me with like flaming torches saying, "You just get in your house and shut up, Mr. Man." But yeah, it's so cool because the cricket. If you've ever watched cricket, it's a great game, but you watch 3 seconds of action and then there's a minute while they walk back and bowl the next ball. So it's actually the greatest thing for editing and for answering comments, because I'll sit there at the cricket, I can watch every ball, but I don't need to watch the bowler walk back. So I'll be edit, up next ball. Edit, next ball. So yeah, with those down times, and like I say, commuting and that sort of thing for folks in the real world that aren't crazy people that edit on their phone at the cricket, it is just a great thing. And I've always said, if you've got a smartphone in your pocket, you've got a studio. Like, you can walk around with your music studio. You can mix on the go. You can record. You can edit. You can get ideas down. You can write lyrics. It is pretty cool. So it's probably a good point to keep in mind that we will go back to being a more portable society in the future. So just because we're all stuck in our audio caves 90% of the time now doesn't mean that'll be the case down the track. So consider that. Scott says, "I think anyone on the fence can wait maybe until March for this year's iPad." That's a really good point. So we'll probably have a new iPad announcement.
And a new MacBook Pro allegedly as well.
Allegedly, yeah. So, and that's the thing. I'm on two sides of the fence here. I'm like, just do it because you have to do it at some point. And I'm like, there's no rush because something new's always going to come out.
Yeah.
But the thing is, just make your decision and go all in. So folks like said, "Oh, I bought a Mac in November and now I'm sad because the new one came out." I mean, I bought the iPhone 10s and then like a week later the iPhone 11 came out. So it's okay. It's still good. It'll still work, and you just won't have that feeling of being right up there with the newest and greatest. But it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, no one cares as long as you can get the job done and record your music. I've realized a bunch of other people have put things here. I'm going to come on down here. Jan says, "Suppose you install the iOS version of GB on an M1 Mac Mini and you have a touchpad. Can you then play instruments like you were on an iPad?" You probably could if you could install GarageBand iOS. And Jade has actually used, I can't remember the name of the app. Jade will let us know.
Saw that.
Yeah, so you can actually install apps using one of the older apps that helped you sort of back up your iPad and iPhone. So it's physically feasible, but I don't think she had a whole lot of joy with that. So I wouldn't recommend.
I don't know if that's the same video where she managed to load up more cowbell.
Oh, I think it actually was. Yeah. Yeah. So if iOS
I
apps
love
that have
that.
opted out, there is a way. So go and check out Jane's channel and find out how she did that. Infinite Mind says, I'm completely new to GarageBand. I'm looking for singing using it. Please send me a YouTube link where to start. TheGarageBandGuide.com. That's all you need to
Hey,
know.
checks
All
in
you
the
need to
post.
know. We'll just see. We'll grab a couple of. Oh, we've got some questions coming in as well. I'll catch up on the chat and we'll just throw out what's happened here. Question: Can you play the touch instruments using Logic Remote to record them using GB Mac? So I haven't used Logic Remote. That's the iOS app that can help you control GarageBand on your
Yeah.
Mac. Can you use it for touch instruments, or is it
The
just to
touch
run
instruments
record?
that you can use it to control the touch of the instruments that are in GarageBand for Mac. You can't
Right.
play GarageBand for iOS instruments in Logic Remote and have it recorded in GarageBand for Mac. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Good. Right. Okay. Good. But you can use it to control. You can use it in place of a MIDI controller
Okay.
to control the instruments in GarageBand for Mac. Yeah.
And it actually has a keyboard touch on the touch screen on
Yes.
your
Yeah.
iPhone or your iPad. Oh, that's cool. So there you go. So if you're on a Mac and you are desperately desiring the ability to play the touch screen and using the typing keyboard's not doing it for you, that could be a
You should
good
check out
option.
Logic Remote, Pete. I think you'll find it like a really good bridge between the two platforms. Yeah, it is. It is great. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. I definitely need to. And I know Mark, who's here in the chat, has been using it and recommending it as well. It's just too many things to do. People are like, when are you going to get onto Logic? And I'm like, I've barely
I don't
switched on my
sleep.
Mac yet. Emobot 9000, coolest name on the internet. I'm getting a MacBook Pro soon. I noticed they only have 2 ports. This is something that we probably didn't cover off on, but how are you going with the port situation? Because there are indeed two USB 4 Thunderbolty type ports, whatever they want to call
Yeah.
them,
Yeah. Yeah.
and two standard USB A ports. How have you gone with your gear? Have you found the lack of ports limiting so far?
All about that dongle life, yo. Um, yeah. So I connected to my monitor with the display port cable as opposed to an HDMI cable. So that's one of the. I don't think. Are we allowed to call it Thunderbolt? I don't think Apple call it
I
Thunderbolt. You know
I
what I mean?
don't
USB C.
that one, the C4 Thunderbolt. You sunk my battleship port. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Interface plugged in to normal USB. What else? I don't think I've got much else really, to be honest.
Mm.
I've had to use dongles for things like SD cards. I've got an SD card for my camera for shooting footage, so I've had to use a dongle for that. But I don't have a huge amount of external gear at the minute yet. Anyway,
Yeah.
just I've got my basic setup just to kind of start getting stuck into it. I think in
Yeah.
future, yeah, I think I do see a USB hub in my future though, because unplugging and plugging in stuff is quite annoying.
Yes.
Yeah. What about you? Have you found it a bit of a hindrance, or have you been okay? Or
Yeah, I mean, I have, but only because of the level of stuff that I've been doing. So
right?
because I've been starting to try to do live Mac tutorials, I've wanted 2 different audio interfaces. So I've had my Focusrite Scala as well as my mixer plugged in. I've had my webcam plugged in because I do things like this, and then plugging in like a USB mouse and keyboard. So I very quickly got past that. And again, I use 2 screens. So I've got the HDMI for one screen, and then I had to use the USB-C or whatever it is
Yeah.
to USB to HDMI for the other screen.
Right.
So yeah, I have run out, but yeah, powered USB hub, as Mark says here, is
Yes.
what you will need. And I happen to have a bunch of them lying around, so I just plugged in a powered hub. I've got 7 ports now of USB. Everything's plugged in, and I've got space over there. I've got 3 more. To use at any given time if I want to plug in a flash drive or if I want to plug a SD card reader or whatever, it's there. I mean, it does. I didn't want to go down that track. I would have loved it if they just had 4 ports on the back or 5 or 6, but it's the trade-off that was the M1 apparently just didn't support it, or the current version
And
didn't
remember,
support it.
these are the base models. I think when we get the more powerful versions of these, because they still sell the Intel kind of mid-range version of the Mac Mini on Apple's website. You can still buy the Intel version, which has 4 Thunderbolt or whatever ports on the back as well. I don't think it'll be long before they upgrade that model to include an M1 chip, and then you'll have more port selection. But again, just means you have to wait if that's what you want, doesn't it? So
Exactly. I know patience is the virtue. It's a hard thing at the moment. We're all being
yeah.
asked to be patient in many aspects of life, and it's not always fun. On film in focus, is going to continue using iPad to draft ideas and then over to the Mac to polish. And I think that's something a lot of folks do, is that this is your sketchpad, and then when you want to go and mix and master and do all the things, you go over to the Mac. So
Absolutely.
yes, worth considering that. Victor says, yeah, the AUV3, exactly.
Yes.
Something like Ravenscroft is about I think it's $30 something, and then it's $200 for the Mac version. So absolutely an example of where that is. Daddy's sad because he knew we wouldn't use the iPad as much. It's just that I'm learning.
Traitor.
I know, and to be honest, I say that, but I'm actually swapped my PC for my Mac. If I'm really honest, it's probably the PC that's getting zero love right now, and it's all about the Mac. And of course, we know that Jade Star uses all things, and they're all working seamlessly together there.
Yep.
All right, I'm way behind here on what I'll do is I'll make Patrick talk about something while I go through the rest of the chat.
Me.
Not you, not that guy. While I go through the rest of the chat and get caught up here. So what does it do? I plug in an app of the week and I'm like, oh, what do we do this week? I've got no ideas. I know, I'll go to Patrick's videos and find the last one that he did and make him talk about it. So why don't you tell us all about this little baby here, Schlap AU-V3. Schlap, and I believe there's a Mac version as well, or
yes.
You can explain it. So while I look here at the comments and get caught up, tell us all about Schlap and why people should schlap out a couple of quid and pick it up.
Schlap. Well, a couple of quid being the main factor there. This is $2. There's also £2 and might be two something else depending on where you're buying it as well. From Calum Audio, so it's the same team who made the excellent Tape Pro and also Tape Cassette and Tape Cassette 2, two free great saturation plugins on Mac and the app equivalents on iOS. It's really unique. It's got a lot of cool features in it. It's a compressor. It's quite an aggressive compressor. Has some really great controls. Your ratio controls. There's 4 different variations you can use. It can completely change the character of the signal that you're putting into it. It's got that fantastic display, as Pete's showing you there, which does a really good job of giving you like a good visual representation of what it's actually doing to your ingoing signal as well. In my video, I did say it reminds me quite a bit of Audio Damage's Rough Rider. So the third version is available now for free, but you've got a lot more control. So Rough Rider, I find you can either add a little bit of compression or it destroys whatever it is that you're putting it onto. Whereas you've got a lot more kind of degrees of destruction with this one compared to Rough Rider. Calum Audio as well, absolute mad lads. $199 on iOS, and this is a fully functional, fantastic compressor with sidechain functionality as well, which we don't get in GarageBand. Thanks, Apple. Also available on the Mac for, well, this is quite interesting, £12. £2 on iOS, £12 on Mac. So there is that kind of difference of market value there as well. But it's great. £2. Go and buy it. It's great. I know you've grabbed it, Pete. You've yet to kind of dive into it too much, but I really think
I did. I grabbed it as soon as I saw your video and saw how much it was. And it's a good thing because, like, it's a little secret behind the scenes sort of stuff. Patrick and I occasionally get approached by developers who want to give us copies of their apps. And when we do, we'll let you know in a video. We'll say, hey, they were kind enough to give us a copy. We're reviewing it for you. It's all cool. It's all above board. I didn't even bother. So I'm like, I'm not worrying the lads at Caleb to say, can you give me this $2 app? Look, clearly they've hit the price point exactly in the right spot, because for me, it just made sense and it looked super cool. And I watched 5 seconds of Patrick's video and went, yep, this is exactly what I want. And I went for it. And again, I love the fact that not only does it have the functionality, but a display like this, and I was going to show it on my iPad, but I'm not tempting fate here, where we've had video and audio working okay for the show, so I'm not going to do that. But I love that, because another app that I reviewed recently, which was the Channel Strip, which is by Audio Damage, who do I'm blanking on this.
Rough Rider.
They do Rough Rider, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, all kind of in the same thing. So Audio Damage do Channel Strip, and the one thing I like about their compressor is it had a little meter very similar to this, but to have a standalone compressor that has that level of visualization that actually shows you what it's doing. I think it
Yes.
helps you understand compression. When you can see
Yeah.
those bits where it's actually hitting the threshold and how much is actually being dug out and how much is being compressed, I think that helps people understand what it's actually doing and
Fantastic for
what's going on.
beginners. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I should point out actually and say that that is introductory pricing. So it goes up on the 15th to $3.99 on the App Store. So it doesn't go up by much, but yeah,
massive.
so
But
get
yeah,
it
you
for the
might as well
15th
grab it.
if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. Do go ahead and grab it, and again, so you know that we don't get anything. There's no kickbacks or anything involved. If you go to the App Store and download this, or don't, Patrick and I won't. We'll be happy for you if you get a cool app, and then if you say, "Hey, watch your video, Patrick," and downloaded the app, and I think it's awesome, that's cool. But in case you think that there's some underworld nefarious
No.
app recommendation thing that we do, whether you get it or not is really not an
Calum
issue.
Audio are a fantastic developer. They're kind of quite a small developer, so they're worth supporting. They really support their apps. I mean, I like Cleveland apps, for example, but you maybe get an update to a Cleveland app, once a year, maybe if you're lucky. Whereas obviously these smaller developers actually take a bit more of a keen interest in their app and how they can improve it over time. So yeah, definitely support them. They're a great developer.
Well, there you go. You've already had a few people jumped in there. Russ is like, "Yep, cup of coffee app price, absolutely." Ed's been slapped, which is good, and Daddy's jumped in and just grabbed it as well. So good job, in supporting the developers. And again, it seems that every time I do an app review on an app that's a paid app, pretty much the first comment's going to be, "Would be better if it was free." And I mean, we didn't have a rant for today, so maybe this is a mini rant, which is that these are people that their livelihood depends on them working hard to create a cool product for you to then use. And folks like Nembrini does a great job and has a bunch of free apps and then has a bunch of paid plugins. And I've heard people say, "Why don't you make all of them free?" And the answer, they're nice enough that they're not going to say it this way, but the answer is because I need to feed my children and keep my power on because this is my job. And I think sometimes we're so ingrained in this whole everything should be, because GarageBand spoils us. It's free. iMovie spoils us. It's free. Yeah. We're in this sort of free culture, and not saying that GarageBand users in particular. I've heard Pro Tools users complaining about paying $20 for a plugin. I'm like, you're paying a subscription fee to use your DAW, and you're worrying about $20 plugin. But yeah, so there you go. There's a mini rant, which is support developers who support you by making, and especially as you say, those that update their apps regularly. Like Tape Cassette. I remember saying when I reviewed Tape Cassette, I said, "This is a great plugin with the most shite looking interface you're ever going to see." And clearly they took it to heart because they released Tape Cassette 2 and said, "Take this, Johns. This now it does a cool thing and it looks awesome as well." I'm like, okay, done. Love it. Right. No, so I got all off on a tangent with my rant there. Now, I was speaking to Patrick about 12 hours ago before I went to bed, before we started the show, and I'm like, "Patrick, you got a tip of the week?" And he said, "Nope." And I said, "Great, neither do I." So we cheated, and we went over to the GarageBand users group, and I thought, let's crowdsource this. That's what all the real people do, isn't it? They don't do the work; they crowdsource it. So I thought we would crowdsource it and find out from a few folks. And some of you may be live here, but I'll read out a couple of the tips that folks threw out here. So our buddy Andy said, "I have a tip. It might be a bit obvious or rubbish, but blending acoustic guitar tracks. Take a direct input from the pickup and take a mic channel, record the two tracks at the same time. Then you can EQ or mix or blend the two sounds, get the crispness of the pickup and the warmth of the mic. You can then dial out some of the clicks and buzzes from the mic track and keep that live acoustic tone." That is a really good one.
Excellent tip.
When you're recording acoustics, Patrick, do you prefer to mic up your acoustic, or are you a plug it in and just use your built-in pickup guy?
Usually mic up, yeah. I think if you have the opportunity to do that, then do that, because it will usually always sound better than just plugging in. But that is a great tip for just filling out your acoustic sound. If you were to kind of do that and then do that again and then do that again, you're going to kind of triple track a guitar part. You're going to have a great, massive sounding acoustic guitar presence for like a chorus or something like that. Yeah, that is a fantastic tip. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, because that can be the one thing is sometimes your mic will just pick up a bit too much pick scrape, or you're not getting that real sort of attack on the string that you need, and then blending the two together, having the two, and especially if you've got a two-channel interface and you're recording mic anyway, you might as well plug in your second channel
Yeah,
to your guitar direct and record that at the same time because you got nothing to lose, and even if you don't use it, you just want the mic
yeah,
sound, then just mute it, take it out. So give yourself the option to blend it in. Really good tip.
absolutely.
Buddy Tim says a tip: record a MIDI track with the chords on first as a guide. Mute it if you don't actually want the sound, but you'll always have the track as a chord reference in the future. I like that. So record a MIDI track of just a chord, so just a single chord at the start of each bar.
Mhm.
I'm going to use that. I actually really
Yeah.
like that because especially if you're not a guitarist, because I tend to do that with the guitar anyway. So if I'm writing a song, I'll play a acoustic guitar chord over the whole song, even if that acoustic guitar may come in or out or not be in it at
Yeah,
all.
like a guide
But yeah,
track. Yeah.
a guide track. But yeah, if you're recording a song and you want a guide track of your chords, that's a good way to go. You can
That
actually put
is.
them in there. I like that. And you could even chop it up and actually put the name of the chord at the top. I've seen people do that as well, where they have one track that every time there's a chord change, they split it and they name each chunk of audio that chord so that when they're going back and they're trying to play along as it goes through, it'll actually be tracking with their guide track and their guide track tells them their chord. So there you
There
go.
you
A
go. It's an idea for
secondary
tomorrow's video,
bonus.
Pete. There you go.
Hang on, let me just get it here. Well, it's a race. Patrick and I will both make a video on that tomorrow, and you'll both come out and go, a brand new original video from the GarageBand guy. There are no new ideas. Don't worry. Patrick and I still the amount of times that I've released a video and I get a message from Patrick going, "You bugger, check out the script that I'm writing right now for tomorrow's video." Yeah, it just happens. There's only like 20 topics we can cover, so we're always going to be covering the same stuff. But that's all right. You get it in a different accent and with a different
Yeah,
delivery style.
exactly.
Tom Parker, not that Tom Parker. I just discovered I can copy and paste audio files from AUM and Gadget into GarageBand, and it blew my mind. Massive piece of the musical puzzle solved for me, and still learning. There you go. So I didn't know that either. So you
Neither.
can copy actual audio files, and because I guess there is a paste function in GarageBand. Like, you can paste between GarageBand projects. So if you've got audio in one project, you can copy it,
Yep.
open up a second project, paste it. I had no idea you could do it between apps. If
No.
it's an audio file, I guess it just puts that audio clip on your pasteboard, and then when you go in, it pastes it in. So there you go. If you're using other apps and other DAWs, I might have to try that with something like Cubasis. That'd be cool. Maybe you could. I wonder if you could copy MIDI from GarageBand and paste it in Cubasis so you can then export.
It's the day after this video sorted now.
I'm gonna have to go. I'm not writing any of these
Gold
ideas
mine.
down. I'll be going back to these videos and this video and going, what did we say again? What am I doing? What video am I making? We've got one from Glenn here. Says, he just says, great stuff. Unfortunately, you don't address MacBook users. So no tips for Mac. That's a good point. Well, you could use the guitar tip. That's the same whether you're on Mac or iOS. So
Is he talking about you specifically because you've only just started
Probably.
doing Mac stuff? Maybe, right? Okay.
Probably. And look, as I say, the amount of comments that I respond to, which is someone's like, why don't you cover Mac? I need to know how to do this on a Mac. And I'm like, thegaragebandguide.com, enter. Just go there. That's where you need to go. And our buddy Noah says, as a tip, always be careful with the low end of your songs. Most of us will be really cautious with the high end because most speakers won't give the sub, but a bad low end can screw up all of your mix.
Yeah.
What say you on low end and bass? How do you manage your bass to make it translate across different listening platforms, Patrick?
This is it. Absolutely. If you don't have some form of monitor speakers, which a lot of people, especially if you're music making on iOS, you're not going to have, you will absolutely hear those high-end frequencies and be able to tame them or boost them. But you just, depending on what you're listening through, you just won't get those sub-frequencies. That's a very good point. The car test is always quite a good one. I mean, people still do that now because it still works. If you don't have kind of professional studio monitors, you want to be listening back to your project on as many sound sources, different sound sources as possible. So stick it on a USB stick and attach it to your telly and listen to it through your TV. See what that sounds like. Take it into your car, cry yourself to sleep, and then because it always sounds dreadful in your car. And then obviously make notes on what kind of sticks out between in your project throughout all of these sound sources, and then fix it that way. That was the way I used to do it for many years until I actually put my hand in my pocket and bought a pair of monitor speakers. Yeah.
Nice. I like it. And as Jade says here, yeah, Pro Studios still do the
Yeah,
car test. Exactly right. And I think having that, the ability to have that, and I guess the key point to take away there as well is, as Patrick said, make it, to adjust it to make it the best you can. It is not going to sound perfect on every listening environment,
no,
because the difference between listening on the teeny tiny speaker at the bottom of your iPhone versus a big, powerful car stereo system with a giant subwoofer in the boot, that's going to be very, very different. And you just need to find that balance where it's not going to be too hyped when you've got a big subwoofer, so it's not blowing people's ears off, but you're going to have enough when someone's playing it on a tiny speaker that it's not completely missing. So you're never going to get, but again, and the other reference thing is, and this is why I love listening to music, is don't just listen to your music in your listening environments, listen to other music. So
yeah,
listen to your favorite track. So if I'm making a rock track and I want it to sound like Pearl Jam, and I'm trying to mix and master it, I will listen to a Pearl Jam track in
yeah,
the exact headphones or speakers that I'm mixing my song in, and then listen to my song and go, right, what's the difference? What's missing from mine that might be in there? And especially for low end, you'll find that you can get a much better balance when you're
yeah,
actually hearing what a professionally mixed and mastered song sounds like in your own listening environment. So a
absolutely.
good tip from Noah, and there you go, Patrick has built on it for you. Where are we at? We've got 10 minutes to go, so
Remember when
let's.
these used to be half an hour, Pete?
I know.
How did we do that?
I don't know. I really don't know. We didn't rant quite as much,
Yeah.
which is the problem. Now, did we have anything else in here? I think we've actually covered everything we wanted to. I missed something right up the front, and I just wanted to mention it here because it's not specifically GarageBand related, but it will impact independent musicians. And if you're using GarageBand, you're
Mm,
probably also an independent musician. And there's been some controversy at the moment related to Spotify in particular, and a lot of
surprise,
folks have.
surprise.
Right. A lot of folks have thrown DistroKid under the bus too, because it's been mostly
Yeah,
DistroKid users that have been affected, and the conspiracy theories and the tinfoil hats have started being applied. That because Spotify have a partial ownership of DistroKid, they own shares in DistroKid, that they're all coming together and they're all conspiring together to bring down independent musicians. The facts or the reality of what's actually happened here, if you haven't caught up, is that Spotify removed about 750,000 songs, which is a lot of songs, from music
wow.
producers for repeat streams or for repeat plays, which basically means that people have been using services that potentially may just use bots or may use
Yeah,
farms of low paid workers to stream your music over and over again, so that your Spotify numbers, instead of it saying 100 streams a day, it says 1,000 streams a day. Now, the big, I guess, controversy about this is that a lot of folks have been doing what they think is the right thing. So they've been going to these companies that help with music promotion. And then the music promotion company said, yeah, pay us $100, 100 quid, and we'll get you on all these playlists on Spotify. We'll get you all
yeah,
these streams on Spotify. But what the person paying that person doesn't know is all they're doing is going and using some of these dodgy third parties that do these fake streams, these botted streams, these fake playlists that actually get them played. So it's kind of that caveat emptor, buyer beware.
mm,
Be careful about who you're actually trusting and what you're doing, because there really are no hacks. As an independent musician, there's no real way to get yourself heard apart from the hard work of engaging with end listeners
yeah,
and creating your best music and getting it out there, and doing what you can. But if you're going through these other methods, even if you're not the one doing the bad thing, as soon as you're paying someone and you don't know how it's working and it seems too good to be true, guess what?
yeah,
Probably is. So
yeah.
I don't know if you've caught up on much of this, or if you had any thoughts or reaction to this, or have had an experience with folks asking about this in the past, Patrick.
We talked about this before the show started, and I said I had my head buried in a Mac for 3 days, so I'd missed kind of the intricacies of what had gone wrong. I'd kind of seen,
Mm.
obviously, on Facebook. I know a couple of people have been saying, I think Jade specifically. I saw her post about it, or a comment about it, I think. But yeah, I mean, that's
Mm.
not a new thing. I distinctly remember back in my day, when SoundCloud was good SoundCloud, there was a massive purge of accounts and plays for exactly the same thing. So when
Mm.
SoundCloud actually mattered as a platform and how many plays you were getting actually mattered, people would do the same thing, fake social proof, they'd pay people to bump up their play numbers so that they could kind of look like they were popular.
Mm.
I guess obviously the difference here is that people would be earning money from those
Yeah.
dodgy streams. So obviously it's a bit more of a kind of a fraud element almost in there. If you're kind of earning
Yeah.
money from from dodgy streams. Yeah.
Yeah, and that part I think is what has made the conspiracy theories start floating around. More so is that they think that this is a play by Spotify to not have to pay out independent musicians. So if you can
Right.
paint it with that brush where you say Spotify removed all these tracks because they didn't want to have to pay all of these musicians for all of these streams, Spotify is saying we're removing all this because these are all illegitimate streams that have been put on these songs, and we don't want these songs on the platform because clearly the artist's done something wrong. And I think that whole blame side, it's not necessarily that the artist has done something wrong. They've probably, in most cases that I've read between the lines, they've trusted in a service or a platform that they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Because again, if you're getting straight, and this is a problem, if you're getting same with YouTube, I rail against the whole sub for sub. I know you get it in your comments all the time. It's like, let's be YouTube friends, bro. Sub for sub. Come and check out my channel. The reason I think those things are so bad is A, they don't work because they're really annoying and they don't work. But B, they actually damage you and your brand and your music and your videos, because the more people subscribed or streaming or fans of you that are not actually fans of you, then the less people are going to engage with your content ongoing, and therefore the platform are going to see that, and the less successful you'll be. So you want the people, so you want the 80,000 people that are GarageBand Guide subscribers are GarageBand Guide fans and subscribers. You don't want, I'm sure you'd love to be 100,000, but if those 20,000 are people that don't give a rat's about your videos or about GarageBand, it's completely pointless you having that vanity metric and holding your silver play button and going, hey, look at me, when it was all nothing. And worse than that, if you did decide to do that...
I'm not going to do that when I eventually get 100,000 subscribers, by the way. I'm not saying I'm like, woo, yeah!
Oh, yeah. I expect it. I hope so. I'm coming on your channel to do it for you. I'm going to hack it.
By the looks of it, you're going to beat me, Pete, or it'll be the same day.
There you go.
The same day.
People will be like, see, these guys just do everything the same together. They can't, they even hit milestones together. But it is a good point, though, because I think the one thing I will say is that, and not to get too deep into this and sort of semi-ranty again, but I think the platforms have some ownership of this as well, because they put the vanity metrics on a pedestal. And someone made a good point to me, which is that they said that they were trying to apply for like a music grant. And the first thing that they asked is, how many Spotify streams do you get? How many Spotify followers? How many YouTube? Wow. So I think there's a lot of things that are like unlocked by what the metrics say, as opposed to the genuine engagement you're getting with your music. And I think it's because it's really hard to measure engagement. Like, how engaged are people in your music? You can't really put a number on it, but you can easily put a number on how many fans you have, how many people subscribe to you, and how many people are streaming you on Spotify. So, and I think the platforms kind of say, with one hand, they're like, don't do dodgy things to get numbers. And with the other hand, they say, it's really important to get lots of numbers. And we're gonna send out all these emails every month telling you exactly how many people listened and exactly what's going on your channel or your Spotify stream. It's a hard balance, I think, to get hold of there.
Yeah. Spotify Wrapped for Artists springs to mind. Yeah, every end of every year you get artists sharing, this is how many streams I got this year. Yeah, there is kind of a push from platforms for that type of thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Right, well, we are at the end here. I'll just see if we have any final questions in the final countdown. It's as Ed said, it's the like syndrome. And I think one of the best things that we did here in Australia, I don't use Instagram enough to know if it's still there, but they took the likes away. And I think that was the best thing they could have done, because there are clearly people that are posting things just to count the number of likes that they have. So you can still view it, but you have to go into that. There's no public display of how many likes your Instagram post has received, because they said people were just doing things not for engagement with the people watching their stuff, but just for the likes. And to the point where people were so insecure that they'd post something, they'd be watching it for 10 minutes. If it didn't get enough likes, whoop, delete, never happened, and just move away.
It's sad, isn't it?
It's really sad
about that. Yeah.
Really scary. There you go. And Jay's got a question. We'll make this the final question. Hey. When are you coming on my show? There you go. No, nothing like public pressure.
I'm coming on your show, Jade. And I realise now I have no idea what time. But I'll message you. I don't know if you've got a show after this one, but I'll message you and I'll find out what time. But yes, if you'd like to hear me rabbit on more about myself, and possibly listen to Jade do her world famous impression of me, I'll be on Jade's channel on Thursday at some point.
A certain time. Well, if it's the usual time that Jade does it, it's straight after this. So it would be this time, but on Thursday evening. So 9 p.m. London time, 8 a.m. for those here in Australia. And that would be 1 p.m. 1 p.m. West Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. If it's different from that, Jade, let us know.
Wow, Pete, all from the top of your head, that's
All
impressive.
from the mate, I live
Thank you.
time zones. I live it. There you go. 9 p.m. your time. So there you go. If you're here Thursday afternoon or evening in the US and the UK, Friday morning here in Australia, you need to get that. And what I'll do is I'll get Jade to send me a link, and we'll put that in the description of this one. So if you're watching on the replay, you'll be able to find that. And down there, you'll also find a link to where you can actually check out Patrick online, which is where, Patrick? Where can people go to check out, to see your face and to hear your dulcet tones online?
If you really want to do that, yeah, the GarageBandGuide.com would be the best place to start. Everything gets posted on there, or also on YouTube, which is youtube.com/the GarageBand Guide. Yeah.
Easy, very easy to do. And yes, if you've ever asked me a question about GarageBand Mac, you would know that because you've been sent there by me. Because I'm learning, but I'm still a long way from being anyone that
I
can tell
just
you.
send people right on to Dean Davis. That's it.
And meanwhile, Lewin Barringer is just everyone's just going there in the end anyway. Rightioki. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to my guest host Patrick for being here again for the first time of many, I hope, in 2021 appearances here
Happy
on
New
the
Year,
show.
yeah.
Exactly. Happy New Year to everyone here. And what we say at the end of every show is, for goodness sake, be kind to yourself first and foremost. Be kind to other people, including your fellow YouTubers. We're people too, and keep creating, folks.